And I will ask for a roll call of our attendance.
Commissioner Henderson?
Here.
Commissioner Burtnett?
Here.
Commissioner Carey?
Here.
Commissioner Batterson?
Here.
Commissioner Velasco?
Here.
Excellent. Okay, well, I will ask if we have any comments about our minutes from our last meeting. If not, I will ask for a motion.
I'll motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approved. Excellent. Boy. So we have some presentations, and we will give the floor to Mr. Vandekamp.
Good afternoon, Chairman and fellow commissioners. My name is Mark Vandekamp, and I'm the Public Information Manager for the city. And I know I've met several of you, and welcome also to the audience and to those who are watching replay. The reason I'm here today is an important presentation that will take only a few minutes, I promise. It is interactive. On your dais for the commissioners, you will see that you have these forms, and also these are available in the back. They're also available on the city's website at cityofsantaMaria.org/priorities. This is a survey the city is doing last month and through June. We really want to hear from all segments of the community what they feel are the priorities for city services. We have done an earlier survey this year. It was during the month of February. The city commissioned a scientific poll of registered voters who are likely to vote in the November election and asked them, and during 18 minutes, a great many questions. What's important to you? And on this survey, it shows that the number one overall priority is public safety, which likely will not come as a surprise to anyone. Increasing the number of police officers engaged in gang suppression and crime prevention, maintaining 911 emergency medical response times, staffing all of our city fire stations with the appropriate number of firefighters, maintaining at-risk youth programs, and I know of interest to this panel, enhancing recreation and youth programs and facilities, and providing safe spaces for teens to go after school by maintaining libraries, parks, playgrounds, athletic fields, and swim center. We have a brief PowerPoint. The survey we did back in February found that basically 3 out of 4 people were very satisfied with the level of service being provided by our city of Santa Maria. They would like very much, and the city would also like to continue to do that. And as I mentioned, now we want to hear from other people. The problem is, of course, financing. The state of California continues to siphon funds, which is legal, away from the city. They've taken over $55 million in local funds from Santa Maria in the last 25 years. A lot of that goes towards schools, and I have nothing against the schools, but I personally would like to see a lot of the money stay here so we can do the best possible programs for our community. And as you can see, it makes it harder when you take money away to do a lot of the programs our community wants. This is a quick montage of the public safety. Some of the presentations I've done before, I just teased that we're hiring really young police officers, but that's simply a student who's enjoying a picture with one of our police dogs. As you can see, we have, from our budget, we're providing about 61% of our general fund goes to maintaining public safety, which is important to people. We have to deal with occasional outbursts of violence. Everyone in Santa Maria remembers about 3 years ago, we suffered through some horrendous violence. There was a spate of 21 homicides in 14 months, but our police department was very fortunate to have the resources necessary to do a counteroffensive, and they put that group out of business. Also, we mentioned this back in 2012. I'm going to start to use the term Measure U in this presentation. We went out to the community in 2012 and asked them to support Measure U, which they did support. They passed it 64%, which was outstanding. And that funds Fire Station 5 out there at the corner of Sway Road Crossing and Donovan Road. We built that station with federal stimulus funding, and we were delighted to get it, but then we did not have the funds to staff it. Fortunately, Measure U came along, and we did not have to brown out the station. So, as I was mentioning, Measure U is very important. It funds fully 10% of our police force, which includes a number of officers, sergeants, a dispatcher, a crime statistics person. I always get messed up on the word statistician because I'm human. And 20% of our fire stations, that's Station 5, 8 hours per week at our public library. A lot of us have been here for a few years, and we recall the recession meant that we had to cut library hours from 56 per week down to 48. Well, Measure U restored that. But again, of interest to those for recreation and parks, we have graffiti abatement program. They do an outstanding job of covering up the mess that people make on public property, and our park rangers are partially funded by Measure U. We also like to be proactive and mention we are very lean and efficient. We became the first city to achieve pension reform, and we have a budget that's going to go to our city council in a couple weeks that is trying to keep the status quo. And it's not an easy thing to do. Another montage of photos. There's a lot of kids in this one, and that's by design. We want to make sure that every child in Santa Maria, every teenager has healthy programs. This is what you're all about. You could probably do this better than I. But we want to make sure that they have a lot of opportunities to be safe and strong, not only during the summer, but all year round. And this is self-evident, what I just mentioned. I'm going to skip it. Again, the survey came up with, out of all those 18 minutes, loads of questions. This is what rose to the top. I'm going to skip ahead because it's on the... We want to hear from you, your concerns, your priorities. As I mentioned, we're going to adopt the new city budget June 19th. As part of the city's budgeting, the city council is going to consider extending Measure U. I'm not saying that they are going to do that. It's entirely up to the city council what they want to do. They're going to make a decision at their July 3rd meeting whether to allow voters the opportunity to extend Measure U. And the city staff will be coming forward at the meeting of July 3rd with a lot of homework to assist our city council. And we're going to tabulate the results of all these forms. We have made about 30 presentations to date. We are about 700 surveys that have been returned, and we are going out to a lot of the clubs, Downtown Fridays. The fire chief, the police chief, the city manager, our assistant city attorney, Philip Cinco, and myself are making the presentations. And this is about the fastest presentation because the longest one I had was about an hour, but that was because it was set up for that kind of time. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them now, or you can reach me at your convenience at another time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van de Kamp. Do we have any comments or questions from the commission? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Mr. Posada, I think we have two retirement resolutions.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you very much, Commissioner Burtnett. So, yes, unfortunately, and fortunately for our retirees, we have two resolutions, one recognizing Salvador Sal Castro and Steve Hosley, both long-term employees of the department. This will bring to a total of 5 what we call maintenance worker 2s, which are our highest full-time level in our maintenance section, who have retired in the last 6 months, more or less. So it's a big demand. Well over 100 years of service is represented with those individuals. And so they aren't here this evening. But we do have a plan on Wednesday, a little retirement barbecue for them, and we'd like to present the resolutions at that time. So my request would be that we read them into the record and then have a motion on them, and then if any of you are available on Wednesday and would like to come out to Pioneer Park at 11 o'clock, 11:30, 12 o'clock? Oh, the 20th, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm gone this one, so next week. Come out to the park and help us present those. And you can let Sheila know if you're interested in coming. And it's casual, it's at Pioneer Park. It's a park thing, so, yeah.
I'm sorry, what time is it going to be?
11:30, more or less, probably around noon by the time they get moving on things, so.
I will
And lunch is provided.
plan to be there. Okay. Okay, well, let's read these into the record. Resolution number 2018-03, the resolution of the Recreation and Parks Commission of the City of Santa Maria, California, recognizing Steve Hosley's retirement after 36 years of service. Whereas Steve Hosley served the residents of the City of Santa Maria and the Recreation and Parks Department from September 27th, 1982 to July 12th, 2018. And whereas residents, fellow City of Santa Maria employees, and departments have benefited from Steve's 36 years of service, passion, knowledge, and dedication. And whereas Steve is a wealth of knowledge and information regarding tree care in the City of Santa Maria's urban forest. And whereas Steve has been an invaluable resource for tree maintenance and care. Whereas, now therefore, it is hereby resolved by the Recreation and Parks Commission of the City of Santa Maria, Steve Hosley is recognized for his 36 years of dedicated and unwavering service to the City of Santa Maria and the Recreation and Parks Department. The Recreation and Parks Commission and Department wish Steve and his family many years of adventure, good health, and happiness. Passed and adopted at the regular meeting of the City of Santa Maria Recreation and Parks Commission held this day, 12th day of June, 2018. I will ask for a motion.
So moved.
A second?
Second. Go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. No opposed and none absent. I am signing it. And secondly, resolution number 2018-02, the resolution of the Recreation and Parks Commission of the City of Santa Maria, California, recognizing Salvador Sal Castro's retirement after 37 years of service. Whereas Salvador Sal Castro served the residents of the City of Santa Maria and the Recreation and Parks Department from February 25th, 1981 to June 22nd, 2018. And whereas residents, fellow City of Santa Maria employees, and departments have benefited from Sal's 37 years of service, passion, knowledge, and dedication. And whereas Sal has a wealth of knowledge and information regarding plant care, proper equipment maintenance and use, construction, and whereas Sal has been an invaluable resource for the various tasks performed in park operations. Whereas now therefore it is hereby resolved by the Recreation and Parks Commission of the City of Santa Maria, Salvador Sal Castro is recognized for his 37 years of dedicated and unwavering service, dedication to the City of Santa Maria and the Recreation and Parks Department. The Recreation and Parks Commission and Department wish Sal and his family many years of adventure, good health, and happiness. Passed and adopted at a regular meeting of the City of Santa Maria Recreation and Parks Commission held this 12th day of June 2018. I'll ask for a motion
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Excellent. Well, I am sorry that neither Sal nor Steve are here to receive our congratulations, but we give them to them, and I hope to see them next Wednesday.
Thanks.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Posada. Okay, so we have opportunity to move on to new business, and let's see if I don't get my tongue tied this time. We will have our streetscape plan presented to us by Netta. So please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. My name's Netta Zayer. I'm the principal planner here at the City of Santa Maria. Thank you again for having us this afternoon. If you recall, we did come a few months past and talked a little bit about this streetscape plan in some length about where it started and the public outreach we had done and the next steps we were going to take, which included having an open house and developing some concept plans and then moving forward through an adoption process. So we're back today to talk through some of those concept ideas and plans that have been refined since the public outreach was done and since staff and some of the community have had a chance to review it. Those concept plans still do need to be reviewed by Caltrans as the streetscape area covers Caltrans right of way, but we wanted to be able to show them to you, get any feedback or questions you might have on it before this plan moves forward through an adoption process. So with all that being said, the study area is within the boundaries of the downtown specific plan, which encompasses Main and Broadway. And the goal of this plan was to really take a look at the streets of the downtown area and try to make them more multimodal, which means more conducive to both not only vehicles, but also pedestrians and bicyclists in this area. They are large streets with high volumes of truck traffic and vehicle traffic that move through it, and how we could look at those streets in rebalancing them to not only meet that vehicular traffic, but also current and future pedestrian traffic and current and future bicycle traffic, as well as transit traffic. And so, as that concept plan and vision continues to come together, this is a rendering of maybe a future idea of what Main or Broadway could look like with future development and maybe some streetscape improvements or enhancements in that area. The plan dives in to a closer look. Sorry, the PowerPoint is freezing. There we go. Dives into a closer look, particularly of a 5-block radius of Main and Broadway around the intersection of Main and Broadway, which was the historical beginnings of the city and the historical four corners of the city, and would be where a natural starting point for redevelopment of the downtown would be. And then from there, a 5-block radius of what could be redeveloped, how could this area be redesigned, and what the streets could look like in this area. Some of the major modifications that were looked at in this area were the idea of narrowing the street width and also narrowing the lanes, looking for safer and more frequent crosswalks and opportunities for pedestrians to cross and traverse Main and Broadway, looking at new bike path opportunities, enlarging the sidewalks for pedestrian activity, and adding more new areas for street trees, and providing some on-street parking. Again, that on-street parking might be counterintuitive right now since there is such a wealth of parking downtown, but in the future, if there's redevelopment in the downtown and some of those parking lots do redevelop, we want to provide the opportunity of convenience parking on the street. So if we first take a look at a Main Street concept plan, again, this is a little bit high level looking at Main Street in its entirety from west to east Main, from Pine Street to Miller. This is the area where we would look at some ideas, like I mentioned before, about narrowing the streets, adding on-street parking, and street trees along the streets. These little green dots that look just like little green dots are opportunities for adding street trees actually within the street network itself along what is now one of the travel lanes. So we'll dive into a little enhanced plan of that so you can see it close up. And then looking at enhancing the intersections with better crosswalks for both pedestrians and bicyclists, an opportunity for a crosswalk and connection at North Lincoln and South Lincoln and Main, and then even enhancements on Miller and what is now the Town Center East main entrance. Here's a section of the street. So if you took West Main and sliced it right through and took a look at what it looks like, the top picture is a representation of modifications that could be made to West Main, and the bottom street section is what it looks like right now. The pie charts to the right indicate what allocation of resources of right-of-way, what they're used for. If you look at the existing conditions, as you can see, the majority of the public realm or the street is used primarily for vehicles. So travel lanes, turn lanes, and parking. The plan proposes to take a look at some of these and think about redistributing that area and giving some more allocation to the pedestrians, the bicyclists, and even landscaping. And so what was the majority used, 75% by automobiles, is taken down to about 58%, and some of that area then used for pedestrian activity, wider sidewalks, street trees, a bike path that would be adjacent to the pedestrian sidewalk and raised and separated from the vehicular traffic. There's still the same amount of travel lanes through, so 2 lanes going west and 2 lanes going east. However, those have been narrowed up so we can use some of that real estate for other uses. Moving on, this is a section of what East Main could look like. Again, the bottom diagram is what it looks like existing. East Main actually has 3 travel lanes that go eastbound, and that could be reallocated down to 2, and some of those turn pockets be combined, again, to widen those sidewalks, add bike paths, to add on-street parking. And as I discussed earlier, there's an opportunity to add street trees right into that parking field that would bring those street trees closer to the travel lanes to create a traffic calming experience, to add more shade to both the bicycle and pedestrians and the roadways. So overall, this could be a more scenic traveling path than what's existing right now. Here's an illustrative plan of what Main Street could look like, a concept plan of Main Street. This is an example of Main and Lincoln. Right now, that is not a through street. There's a median that divides it, but there could potentially be the opportunity of opening that up to through traffic and pedestrian and bicycle traffic. The plan calls for the concept ideas of bulb outs, which are just curb extensions at the intersections that allow pedestrians to be able to walk out further before they cross a street. It calls for this separated bike path that you can see delineated here with a difference of material color. That could look like change of material or color or other ideas like that. Those kind of details have not been worked out yet. And then it also has the crosswalk and the bike path separated, so those 2 movements stay separate and don't conflict. And then on-street parking and street trees are added along the side while still maintaining travel ways for the through traffic. Here's an illustrative street plan of Broadway, which is similar, and I won't go into a lot of the detail here because it's pretty much similar to what you just saw, but again, another illustration of what an intersection could look like based on the concept ideas the plan is putting together. If we look at the overall stretch of Broadway, this is between North and South Broadway, between Mill Street and Cook Street. This again has a lot of the similar features that West and East Main had. Again, some of the notable things are the improvements that could be done at the intersection of Main and Broadway, and would look at adding some intersections along South Broadway, particularly at what used to be Church Street or partially is Church Street, for maybe a future push through of that grid of Church Street. Enhancements at what is at the Town Center West entrance right now, and at Cook Street where City Hall and the theater are at. And then if we move up North Broadway, enhancements at the East Mill and West Mill intersection, and then even at Chapel. Public Works does have a plan to extend this median in the future. However, there's still opportunity to allow for pedestrian crossings in that area. Here's a, sorry, we got Main Street there. Here's a Main and Broadway concept plan of what the intersection of Main and Broadway could look like. By far, this is the biggest and largest and most heavily used intersection in the city. However, there are still opportunities to make that more of a pedestrian and bicycle scale than it is right now. With this concept plan, there would be ideas explored to add bulb outs at those corners to shorten those crossing times and give pedestrian refuge in that busy intersection. Also to allow bike traffic and in that area along with the pedestrian traffic. And then even adding street trees at those corners just to enhance that area. So there is opportunities to improve what that configuration looks like. Just to give you a 3D representation, and we had shown these last time too, but just a little refresher of some ideas of what this would look like visually or in the built environment. The center picture is what those bulb outs and enhanced crosswalks could look like in build out view, what widened sidewalks could do for pedestrian traffic, and even invigorating the existing businesses in that area to have more street front presentation, and then even in the future, maybe some of those sidewalk areas being converted into outdoor seating areas. Here's more examples of how that streetscape could be invigorated, and then here's also example of what was being shown, that buffered bike lane adjacent to the pedestrians. Here they have it as asphalt, but again, other materials could be explored, but it's just easier for bicyclists and pedestrians to travel together versus the pedestrians and the vehicles to travel together. We held an open house last month, and at that open house we revealed 4 different concept ideas of street furnishing, street lighting, pedestrian amenities along that streetscape, and we did ask the community to vote on those. Here are examples of what those 4 streetscape furnishing types could look like: a rustic contemporary, a contemporary, a traditional, or a mission traditional. Each had its own unique little flavor or variety. Again, they were just conceptual, no specific details. And at that open house, the public did vote on them, and the results are in. They picked Mission Traditional as a style and concept that they wanted to see in the downtown area. Yeah, it was Mission Traditional. Like, did I say the wrong thing? Again, with the next steps moving forward on this plan process, staff is currently has a draft plan in our hands that the consultants prepared and put together. We do need to meet with Caltrans and work through that draft plan with them and make sure that we have agreement and buy-off on the concepts that are proposed in there. Again, ultimately, Main and Broadway are under the control and jurisdiction of Caltrans, and they are a partner in preparing this plan, so we want to make sure there's full support moving forward with these concept plans. And then we will take the plan through the hearing approval process process that will go through Planning Commission and City Council. Once and if a plan is approved, that is when the work actually begins. From there, we'll have to look at actually looking at the details of this. We'll need to do some traffic analysis about the idea of narrowing the street lanes and removing some of these travel lanes or consolidating them and see if that's a viable option. Some of these concepts may change over time based on further study of it. So again, we're at a high level concept, and as we drill down into the details, things might change. But from the city standpoint, if we could have our dream and get all the improvements we wanted, this would be the concept that we would be recommending. Available for any questions now, or if you think about it any further and want to know, I'm happy to answer any of those and keep you apprised of the approval process.
Well, I want to say, well done. Excellent presentation. I love the trees and the bike path, I got to say.
That is a favorite.
Those are two personal things, and I also really like the idea that you have the on-street parking. I think that helps. I do have a couple of comments. One is I may have caught a couple of typos. One is on the second page of your, page 12 of our notes, page
Okay.
2 of your thing. It says here, some of the lanes were up to 17 feet wide, but on your chart up there, the widest was 12. So,
There were some of, and let me see if I click on a correct section. Some of the sections, and this may be in the wrong section, but there were some of the travel lanes
that were 17 feet wide.
that were 17 feet, and those,
Sure.
that one was a right-hand turn pocket that just had some extra width.
Sure.
We are talking with Caltrans about the idea of 11-foot travel lanes, which has been a design exception elsewhere, and we're just working through with them if that could be a design exception here. But I believe the East Main section of the right-hand turn pocket there were areas where it was 17 feet.
Sure. Secondly, on your first map that you showed us of the large picture, the very first map that came up, it says here Pine Street to Miller along Main Street, and you had, it looks like it goes past Pine.
Right.
I just wanted to point that out in case it's a typo and Caltrans comes back and says, hey, you messed up. And I would personally hate that if someone did that to me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you pointing that out. This map represents the larger downtown specific plan area. This was such a large area that we couldn't really drill down to the details for all of this.
Sure.
So when we started looking at studying the area, we reduced the size of that to this 5-block radius from on Main Street from Pine to Miller, and then on Broadway from Cook to Mill. Again, a 5-block radius is about a 15-minute walk in each direction, which is, statistics show, the most comfortable traveling distance for a pedestrian. They'll walk about 15 minutes in each direction. So we kind of used that rule of thumb to map out the area that we would focus on first.
Good. One last question, then I'll
Sure.
let everybody else ask. Last time you were here, I remember we addressed the issue of truck detours, but I don't remember what was said.
That's a very good question, and a question that staff has thought about, and we've heard a lot from the public, a desire of maybe rerouting trucks or what to do with the trucks. Currently, Main Street is a designated truck route for Caltrans.
Sure.
And a primary connector from Guadalupe to Highway
The freeway.
101. To really be able to redesignate that or pick an alternate route, we would have to explore, do a truck study of alternate routes that trucks could take, and work with Caltrans in redesignating that as a truck route versus Main Street. That would be a lengthy process and definitely one we can do, but that will take some time.
Sure. is 11-foot lanes enough for semis?
And that's what we are discussing with Caltrans to see what an appropriate lane width for both vehicular and truck traffic is. It may not be. Caltrans may say for safety reasons 11 is too narrow and we need to bump it up to 12. Those are discussions we're going to continue to have with them as we drill down into the details. But we want to obviously balance safety with the ability to reallocate some of that area.
Looks great. Thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, please?
So this process has been amazing, the interactive process, and I appreciate it. And the trees are really cool too. But what would be the timeline, or if you have like a ballpark of what do you expect with that?
A timeline of when we would actually see implementation of some of this.
Is that too much to ask?
No, it's not. And it's a very good question. And there will be an implementation plan component to the plan. Fortunately, our Public Works Department and Public Works Director is we want to build things kind of attitude. And so there are discussions of once the plan is adopted, looking at initial projects to start on. One area that Public Works and what the community feedback at Open House was is to look at West Main Street first, considering there's already buildings up along the frontage and a lot of restaurant and uses there, that could we start with some enhancements there. In order to do that, we're going to have to go through some studies with Caltrans and prepare some more detailed drawings for their review. We're not able to predict how long that's going to take, but the goal is once a plan's adopted to begin that process in preparing all the information Caltrans needs to approve some of these details. And our hope is in the next few years we could see some of those modifications happening on West Main Street, and then maybe trickling into Main and Broadway.
Great.
I have a couple questions.
Please.
First, the concept is just wonderful. I think that everybody would like to see a downtown that's more walkable and community friendly, and so beautiful to think about. I just had a couple of questions about the specific process. It looks like the traffic analysis happens after all of the approval.
Yes.
So if then it's found that so few lanes would negatively impact, say, the surrounding streets, what then? Caltrans will make the amendments to the plan, and then it comes back to public hearing, or is that process over at that point?
That hasn't been determined yet. So we are still going to meet with Caltrans to get even more specificity with them on what their process is moving forward. It's been even a little unclear for us as staff of what Caltrans exactly wants as next steps. And like you said, if they determine some of these modifications can't be met, what is Caltrans going to require us to do? This concept plan is the ultimate dream, and then if we have to scale back from there, then we can do so. If we do need to do that, then we're just going to see less of these improvements. We probably will take that through some kind of public process, at least informing the public of that, if not asking for more input. But Caltrans, in order to even look at studies and details, requires us to go through this initial concept plan process first, and ask our community their desires and put together, our wish list before we go through that traffic analysis process. Our hopes is we can come to a good resolution with Caltrans, and we're hoping that these modifications aren't too extensive that they couldn't be approvable, and that we can see a majority of them. That's the goal. But we absolutely will keep the public informed of whatever happens as the process continues.
it's just, even just sitting here and listening to all the traffic that's going by, I think that reducing the numbers, they've had problems in other cities, especially with, satellite navigation, that our neighborhoods are impacted when there's more congestion and things like that. And, just curious about that. But then also, all those beautiful green dots, those would be maintained by the Parks Department, right? Those would be in our jurisdiction, and the landscaping and things part of this plan.
I don't want to speak on behalf of Alex.
Well, the hope would be is that along with the plan as it develops, that there be some kind of either a business improvement association or a landscape maintenance district that would be specifically responsible for generating the revenue to do that. That's what vehicle we would need to do to
Okay.
keep it going,
Okay.
whoever's responsible for it.
Okay. I was just curious because it seems like that would be something that we would be involved in, but it doesn't look like that where the Recreation and Parks Commission is on that last piece of review.
Again, because this is, and that's why we're here today, to, our hope was this would be the approval process. We were moving forward with adoption of the plan when we did receive notice from Caltrans that they wanted to have further discussions before we did that. So this was already scheduled, and we didn't want to delay coming and talking to you. The presentations moving through the approval process are going to be roughly the same, unless Caltrans says there is things we have to change or cut out. If that's the case, we will definitely come back and talk to you about what those modifications are. We were hoping to have this plan adopted in this summer, but it looks like it's going to be maybe more either towards the end of the summer or fall at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for letting us grill you for a few minutes as well.
That's okay. Earning my keep.
Excellent. Thank you, Deb. Okay, moving on to new business 5B, general plan update. And please forgive me, I didn't write down your name.
Right. Is this still on? Okay. My name is Ryan Hostetter. I'm the planning manager here for the city of Santa Maria. And I'm just keeping note of time. I'm going to be as good as I can at being very brief, but I want to make sure that you get the most out of this as well. What we are doing here, if you don't mind me diving right in, we are doing a series of what we're calling road shows. And the goal is to reach out to the community, to ask the community the question, what would you like to see in your scope for a comprehensive general plan update for the city? And so this is very, very, very initial outreach, and to let folks know that we're embarking on this process, and this is a multi-year process. It's a huge undertaking, and we want to ask the community, help tell us what you would like to see in the scope of this. Are there things that you really want to see in this community, really what we should focus our efforts on? So our general plan, we have 7 elements. We have these are required by law, state law, and those are listed up there: the land use, circulation, noise, housing, safety, open space conservation. We have all of those currently. Some of them are quite old. Some of them are updated more frequently, such as the housing element is actually required to be updated every 4 to 8 years, depending on your cycle. So what we are looking at doing is a comprehensive look at our older elements and bringing them up into current standards and bringing new legal requirements that are required into our general plan. And so when we talk about this document, many refer to it as the blueprint. The blueprint for the city, and it talks about, it lays out goals and policies for how things should happen, specifically related to development and zoning and how things should look, and safety and noise and all of these things. There are goals and policies related to them. it talks about what is the future of the city as far as where is your growth going to occur? Are you going to focus on infill? Are you going to expand your boundaries? Is it a combination of both? And this all goes into this effort that we're working on right now. So I went into this, I'm just going to jump right past it. These are the required elements we talked about. We have optional elements that can be brought into this. The elements, though, they don't have to be necessarily individual standalone documents. Essentially, we have legal mandates to have goals and policies related to these topics, and there are some additional legal requirements in there, but we can do a document that has a theme for the city that needs to include these legal mandates. So the format of it doesn't necessarily have to be 7 separate documents. So the way it's set up, this is, I don't want to put you all to sleep here, essentially goals, policies, objectives. These are items that are adopted by the city through a very lengthy outreach process, and then we have to conduct an environmental CEQA process for this as well. But it includes these components that talk about what the future is going to look like and how you're going to achieve that future through implementation measures as well. So I know you can't really see the land use policy map on this type of a screen, but I would like to point out, let me pull up our laser pointer. We have these different categories for our land uses, and you're familiar with our zoning and zoning maps, and this is the basis for our zoning map. This is our land use map. So this tells us where things are going to be located, not to the level of detail like a zoning map, but it tells you where your residential is going to be and about how many residences you're going to fit in with that particular area. So that's where we start talking about density and what type of density. So that's something that through these efforts we're going to really focus on is our highest density here is 22 units per acre. And we're really going to take a good look at that and decide, okay, is this a good density for the city, or knowing that we have a lot of mandates coming from the state on fulfilling requirements for building housing and a lot of pressure to build housing. Are these numbers appropriate moving forward, or do we need to talk about higher densities, and where is that going to go? So that's very important throughout this process. There's a lot of data that needs to be gathered throughout this in all of those elements that we're going to conduct analysis on: traffic, water needs, air quality, noise, all of these things that we're going to have to identify. Specifically to circulation, we have to look at, we are going to work very closely with our Public Works Department as a partner in this, and we need to understand what our access needs are. It's directly related to the livability, as we were just hearing from Neto on the presentation about our streetscape. Safety is a big component to this, and looking at a regional transportation connection. So this is very high level, but it takes a lot of work in conjunction with our transportation partners, our Public Works Department, and our transit division as well. Our housing element is, this one is it's separate. It's on a mandated, legal required update cycle. So ours is relatively new. So we have, we're on an 8-year cycle, and we're about 3 years in. So this one is going to come a little later for us, but it's still related to land use and how we're going to talk about density within our land use map. We have a noise element that is quite old, and we want to really take a look at the goals and policies in there. There's actually requirements in the noise element that in residential subdivisions you build walls along the streets. So as you notice, a lot of the new development, our new subdivisions are walled in, and there's actually a requirement for them to build the walls because of protecting those homes from those large noisy streets. So really looking at those requirements, and is the desire of the city to continue that, or some other type of best practice that could be used as an alternate to walls. Safety element is another piece of this. I went to the Historic Society and got some great photos. They were very helpful, and I wanted to, you'll see a little bit later, walk through time a little bit on where have we been and where are we going. But this was very pertinent to this because we have really great infrastructure here because of all of the work that's been done by the city with providing that through new development, through funding for that. But we need to take a look at our safety element and make sure that we are up to snuff with regards to changing climate, moving into the future, and just make sure we have those goals and policies in place to accommodate for that, and also our state legal requirements as well. So our open space and conservation requirements, this is probably a little bit more directly related to what you all are involved in our open space realm, our parks, our recreational facilities. A big piece of this is partnering with our Rec and Parks Department on this portion and this element and what the vision of the future is going to be for this area, and making sure that we provide those necessary resources for a growing population. And this is a new element. This came out of state law, and when the city's updating 2 or more elements, and if we have a disadvantaged community, we're required to do an environmental justice element. And it doesn't have to be a separate element. It can include goals and policies related to environmental justice within all of the other elements. But this is going to be something that we're going to work closely with and do a lot of homework on the state requirements and what other jurisdictions are doing with this. This is brand new. I don't think actually anybody has done it yet with their general plan updates. But we're going to be looking very closely at this and making sure we're all we're meeting our mandates. So I'm going to move a little bit quicker here. I want you to be able to have time to ask some questions, and I'm going to go through a series of photos that are kind of fun to look at, and a little walk through time here. This was the center of Main and Broadway. This was the center of the flagpole, which is out in front of City Hall now. We've always had wide streets. I've heard that the reasoning behind that is the street was developed so that a horse and buggy can turn around in the street, and so it's really lent itself to the framework that we have today. We had and we have some historic buildings that are right up on Main and Broadway. This is the old Bradley Hotel. And I thought this was kind of fun. We have a busy Main and Broadway intersection where they were installing some signage here, and I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. It's a little bit different era, and there's a neon sign element being brought into town, and there's quite a few neon signs along Main Street here. If you look, all the cafe and all of these different historic elements that are just interesting to look at, to remember kind of where we've been. And back even farther in time, pre-car, this was Main and Broadway as well for the flagpole. So this picture to the bottom right is before the mall, obviously, and we'll have some before and after pictures to kind of show you what was then and what is now. But let me go right there. So This is in the same location. The bottom left, I think the angles, they were on a building, likely out of a second-story window taking that picture, but on the right side, that's where Church Street went through, which was removed when the mall was constructed. And so this is very related to kind of the project that Netta was just presenting with the framework of this area. Depending on what happens with the mall property and any potential redevelopment, it will obviously be related to that and whether or not it can be accommodated. But there's an option, depending on the redevelopment, could the street be pushed back through again? Is there room for that? So that's a big question and is very dependent on many factors, but this is what it used to be before. And again, the same location. This was an old theater, and you all might know this better than me. I'm pretty new. But the old theater, kind of right where the bridge is located now. And this is the same location again. We have large landscape medians now. And before we had, looks like diagonal on-street parking. So we did have a lot of that before. And somebody riding their bike in the crosswalk. So this is a little side-by-side. This is in the same location. So the buildings were quite different. There's a piece of that still left on Main Street between Lincoln and Broadway, and there used to be quite a bit more of that. So it's asking the city, how do you envision this area moving forward, and would you want to see more of that? Maybe not. This is also the same location before the mall. And another, lots of Broadway. This is a corner of Main and Broadway. This is I believe an old bank building that was right on the corner at one point in time. But as you may be aware, recently a mixed-use project was approved on this corner, so we should be seeing some change on that corner. And it includes a building that's right up against the street again. And this is Main Street. We had quite wide sidewalks too, and I couldn't get the year on all of these. I was working with Cindy at the Historic Society, and we were trying to figure out based on the cars, and we're not car experts, but perhaps the 1920s. And this is a really fun one. This is the same location, one with the streets, the grid pushed through, and the other was after the mall was developed. And we got this one from our streetscape project. This is an interesting one on Broadway. And so the city has a lot of different types of development. And so I wanted to take some pictures of representative areas in the city that I know I've heard from community members that are quite popular. This is the Carriage District. A lot of people refer to that as one of their favorite residential neighborhoods. It's close to downtown and has the large tree-lined streets and traditional bungalows. We have, these are not in the Carriage District. This is down off Pine and Church area. And we have a newer residential development southwest side of town, and a lot of new. It's newly built today, but the planning process for these projects really occurred back in the 90s. So the years of planning processes that have happened, you're seeing it being built today. So what we're asking the community now is, what is your vision moving into the future in the next 20 years? One area we feel that we can put a lot of energy potentially into is Broadway. And looking at this is a potential transit, higher density and more intense transit corridor potentially, and maybe there's a lot of potential for increased density along Broadway and some more multifamily housing in this area. There's good connectivity into the center of town. It's just a matter of ensuring that if we are going to increase density in this area, we provide that transit connection so that we're not necessarily just bringing a bunch of additional traffic concerns into the area. And some representative photos of new construction. The bottom left is, that was a few months ago, it's Villa del Sol. It's a senior housing project that's moving quickly, and those faces are all stuccoed and painted today. So we looked closely at some of our existing goals and policies in our general plan, and this is just a snippet of the first goal out of each of those elements. And just as an example, we have in our economic element, one overarching goal in our economic element now is to create more jobs and create jobs that pay higher salaries. Higher compensation, thereby raising the standard of living for the citizens in Santa Maria. We have an overarching goal for land use, maintain and improve the existing character of the community as industrial and commercial retail center for northern Santa Barbara and southern San Luis Obispo County. We have a resource management element overarching goal of provide high quality water resources to meet existing and future water demands. So these are literally the items that we're going to really be looking at and updating. Some of them will likely still be applicable and the community will want to hold on to those, but there's room for new or additional goals and policies through this process. So moving forward, I'm going to just, what we would like to do is ask our community, well, we do have these legal mandated requirements in our general plan. We could put our own Santa Maria flavor on here. And what is Santa Maria to our community members? And is there a way to build that into our general plan as a document? So, we're putting together surveys and we're asking community members what is Santa Maria to them, what do they love about Santa Maria, what can we improve, and I have some here that I'm going to hand out to all of you as well. And it's 5 o'clock, I'm so sorry, but I'm available for any questions.
Once again, great work. I like your presentation. I love the old photos. That makes my heart happy. And it did make me, though, a couple of buildings, I'm like, oh, I'm so sad we don't still have those. But by this time, they would be falling down and, so. On land use, the only question I had was you wanted to be the industrial and commercial center of southern San Luis and northern Santa Barbara. Great. I'm in support of that, but we also need to remember we are also the hub of strawberry growing the whole nationwide. In fact, I was in Indianapolis visiting my dad, and they had strawberries in a clamshell box, and where were they from? Santa Maria, California. I thought that was kind of cool. So, however, I was thinking when I saw that, that's not necessarily the city of Santa Maria, that's our region. That's outside the city, so I don't know if that was really a question, but just a comment.
And it's in the city as well. We have quite a bit of ag property and active ag land within the city limits today.
Sure. Any questions, comments?
Just a couple of things to consider from our perspective, and I think Ryan kind of touched a little bit on those, is the density impacts us. That's the biggest issue that we're facing now is the 22 units per acre, that's less than 2,100 square feet per lot or residence, whatever you want to call it. Those people have to go somewhere. The other point that Ryan made was the gated community. We've been through that, on that road of credit. And what does the gated community offer their residents versus what does the public park system offer them? So there's discussions that need to happen. One of the things that Ryan and I spoke about earlier was our need to proceed and get our leisure assessment done, that maybe that's a tool that might help work into the general plan. And it is our plan next year, in the 2018 year, to go ahead and get the leisure assessment updated so that we can have some new information to, use to present our case, to the community. So that's one of the things we're going to be working on. But timing is everything, did you mention when the last time the general plan was updated?
Bits and pieces over time. It depends on the element, but generally a lot of it is really from the 90s.
So, I was going to say, if you saw those covers on there, mimeograph drawings,
saw
kind
that.
of stuff that we did back then. Unfortunately, I remember those, so. I don't remember the guys working on the flagpole, though. I don't remember, we're back that far. But it's an important, that's where, again, where we have to work hand in hand with planning to develop the future downtown, all around the city, because there's so many different things happening.
Yeah.
I don't want to assume, but with all the work that's been done on the downtown concept plans and those community meetings, will that information also be used for the general plan update? Because there's been a lot of community input that's been coming from that.
And in fact, we're utilizing a lot of the resources, the lists and email lists of people that have said they want to be a part of the city's update process. It is directly related, and actually we're required to make sure all of these things are consistent with each other. All the different elements within the general plan, and then carried out through our zoning code, which is what happens on the ground, all have to be consistent with each other. So absolutely.
Thank you for bringing this forward. It's an interesting process, and it looks like we'll be getting another visit and regular visits possibly, since this is such a big undertaking. But interesting work, and thank you for bringing it to us. I'd like to say too that density also is something to think about. Just on schools, we are so far behind on schools and how impacted we are. We're unique in the region on our class sizes, and it's something we struggle with. So I know this isn't quite the forum, but if that can be, a really careful consideration, because our young folks are suffering with the number of students that we have.
Part of the analysis we're required to do with this project is to look at population growth based on our projected density that the city would fall on as a preferred, and figure out, okay, how many heads are we anticipating? Because it directly relates the analysis to the analysis conducted for how much water we're going to need.
Right.
How much of our roads are going to be impacted? How many students are we going to have in school? So all of those numbers actually get folded into an environmental impact report, which is going to be very detailed analysis that's done as a result of our visioning process.
Great. Thank you.
Well, great work. Thank
you.
you for coming to us, and I'm sorry you felt rushed.
It's okay. We could talk about this for hours and hours. It's probably better that we kept it.
I was interested
brevity.
the whole time, so you had my attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so we will ask, is there any old business? Mr. President, no business, okay. How about informational reports? We have a budget to look at.
Yes, so you have the budget. Dennis prepared that for us. We're 1.9% under right now. I just spent some money earlier, so we're probably at 1.8% now. 1.32%. So, it's coming down to the end of the year. This is a real stressful year for the city wide, but for us in particular, with our retirements and those kinds of things going on. Every time an employee leaves, we have to absorb their benefit buyout. So, it takes time to do that. So coming in, even at 1%, I think we're doing pretty good.
Great.
I have a question. The Families for the First Decade, is that a line item that will be disappearing?
The finance department has a unique way of titling their line items. And so once a line gets a name, it's pretty darn hard to get rid of that name. So what that line represents now, I believe, is, which one, Dennis? What are we doing in that line item?
ACES, and then we have some other programs that fall under that line item as well. So
Yes.
the majority is ACES.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a couple other programs that fall.
And since ACES will be going away, that line item value in the 2018-20 budget will be significantly reduced.
Is there a reason we're overspent on that line item?
The majority of the over expenditure is due to temporary staffing, which we are reimbursed through the grant process. So it is the vast majority is money in, money out, but since it is grant funded, so we'll make up for that on the revenue side.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you, ladies, and certainly
Thank you very much.
you're free to go.
Okay.
Noteworthies, you have in front of you another busy month, getting ready for a busy summer. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions, we'll try to answer them.
Usually we'll try or we'll try?
We'll try. We'll try. If there aren't any, I want to move in the director report, and if you have something come up, feel free to holler, only because I would like to get moving on this and get you all out of here. Just a couple of quick things. I had an opportunity to meet with the development committee. We were talking about a project that happened to be in Ryan's presentation, and that's the Villa del Sol project. They are requesting a credit against their park fees. That will be coming to you at your July meeting. In the meantime, I've asked Commissioner Velasco and Commissioner Carey to, we discussed it, we talked a little bit about it, to maybe get back with some ideas with me that we could bring back to the next meeting for the commission to consider when they hear the presentation from the developer.
Sorry, it wasn't me.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Commissioner Batterson,
I was
sorry.
like,
Sorry. Wrong commissioner.
isn't that a retirement? Is that a retirement community?
Oh, I thought you said if I should retire because I said, wait a minute, a retirement error?
No.
Yes.
It is okay, so in the municipal code, you all remember we went through the Tobes project appeal for
Yes.
Hancock Terrace. All right, so the council said no credit, so we're fine there. What they did do, though, is they set aside the 3 park fees again, like we used to have them. So now there is a subdivision in lieu, or as it's known in the state, Quimby fee. They have the ability to ask for a reduction on that. Administratively, I can reduce fees up to 30% for a development if they, in fact, show some benefit for their residents. In addition to that, there is an additional 30% that is requestable from the city council for senior developments. So that's the hinge pin there. So their request is going to be for 60% credit of their fees, which is roughly $130,000. Is that what I said at our meeting? Somewhere in that realm of their fees. So there's a process they have to go through, and the first step is you all. And then prior to that, then if you agree to some credit above the 30% that I can give administratively, it has to go to the council for approval. So there is going to be a council step if the credit exceeds the 30% that I'm authorized to do. So we'll have a better discussion of it. You'll have a staff report. Probably, I have their letter for request that we'll distribute in the next round.
We have a question.
I have a question on
Yes.
that. I just remember from the last time that we went through this process, because it was several meetings, and then it came down to like, because we couldn't make the decision, that it was council's decision, it kind of was mute that we
Yes.
had all those discussions.
Yes.
Are we past that, or do they still
Yes.
need to come here?
When the council went back to the old way of doing things, you all have the first review. And if you guys voted to give them, my recommendation of the 30%, it's a done. Anything beyond that 30% that they want to request, you would have a place to say yes or no, and the city attorney would figure out how it gets to the council. One of the things that's a problem that I see with the municipal code, similar to the general plan, is that was written back in the 1980s. And so that particular credit section, at that point in time, and I don't want to characterize anyone, but the seniors were a different population. The activity of seniors was much more sedentary. They weren't out in the community doing the things that they do today. A place like the senior center was where they went to recreate, and it was pretty, specific. That's not the case anymore. Seniors are much more active, but the ordinance has never been updated. So it's one of the things that I asked the city attorney to look at, that we need to start moving the ordinances, especially the ones that deal with credit, for senior projects, which there are others of them in there, that need to be addressed and updated to reflect the current senior population. So at that time, a senior could have been somebody in their 60s, heaven forbid that. Hope that answers your question. A couple of other quick things, the Smith Enos house. Also I mentioned this to the committee, that the house is there, the house is ours. In the next budget round, my hope was to kind of button it up, at least get a new roof on it, maybe get some painting done so that it kind of weatherizes it from any more decay. We'll talk a little bit more of that at our July meeting too. We'll just discuss it more in more detail. So if you have any ideas, this is the time to bring them up. We also had a meeting with the Rotary Club, the Morning Rotary Club. They are interested in discussing the possibility of partnering on the barn that's out there. We're kind of a little bit apart, well, far apart, because their concept of the barn and our concept of the barn are kind of different. So we'll talk about those. Again, to the next meeting, I will invite that committee to come and hear what their desires are. It's a little bit, like I say, a little bit bigger scope than what we had in mind, and could impact the site more.
Size-wise.
So, yeah. Buena Vista Park update. This is the mock-up of the sign that's going to go over the archway.
That's so pretty.
So as you walk under that kind of thing there, and then there'll be 3 miniature versions. Imagine this about 8 times the size of this. That's about what it is, I think. There'll be 8 miniature versions, or 4 miniature versions, 3 miniature versions at each entrance to the park. And then Dennis is going to work on a little artistic looking thing for it, that we could have it at each entrance. And then my thought is that we would have some kind of a body underneath it where notices could be posted for public events or something like that. But something that's a little bit more artistic than just, throwing a blank bulletin board up there. So, I'm excited. I think our local artist that did this, who's really a welder, has the right computer and spit it out like that. I think it looks great. I do want to point out that we have heard from the beautifiers. I know some of you commissioners have too, that they were disappointed that the park wasn't going to be open for this summer. We did release a news release today that went out explaining how the rec division is going to get kids that are interested from Buena Vista over to Manami program, so that they have somewhere to go if they would like to go. And it's going to involve some transportation and some leadership, and so if people would like to do it, there will be a way for them to do that. I want to take the opportunity to thank Dennis for working on the art plan, and for the commissioners, Commissioner Henderson and Commissioner Carey, that worked on that committee, and the other members of the committee, but specifically the 3 of you. It was, so there's a final draft that's ready to go to the council. And again, I just want to commend Dennis for hanging in there. It was unfortunate that it got to be, a personal battle on some things, and it never should get to that point. So I let him have a day off the next day after it was done, and, he
Did he
went.
buy you lunch?
He went and licked his wounds, and he was good.
You get another one.
The Santa Maria Town Center has sold, so there is a new company that owns it, and I can't tell you who it is because I don't remember the name. The management company that was operating it was a company called Architectural Ventures. That staff has all left the mall, so there's a new management staff there. We have not met them yet. We don't know who they are. They're going to kind of come in some night, and we'll figure out who they are the next day when they're there. Somebody spent money. I don't know how much. Last time I heard it was for sale was $29 million, so I don't know.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
When it sells, are we the maintenance of the parking lot in perpetuity?
Yes, unfortunately.
And there's no way to get out of that?
No. Well, again, the city is in a position with a new owner to talk about changes to the reciprocal easement agreement that runs the mall and commits the agencies. Some mall owners don't like having to deal with anybody else, so they want to deal with their own parking, they want to deal with their own security, they want to do all that themselves. That's not the way it is here, but I'm sure that companies might want to do that. So that option will be on the table, to have the discussion to talk about those kinds of things. The other thing at the mall is we are closing the third level of the south structure at 8 p.m. 7 days a week, beginning last Monday, the 4th, so last Monday. A lot of, not major problems, but just problems. And so we want to see if we do it over the summer, which typically is when they get their major work. Closing it off will help and, keep people down in the lower levels of the mall. One concern from the property owners on the office buildings, we think we've addressed that by telling them it's a pilot project. We'll see how it goes. We'll want to hear from your customers and, tell us what they think. See, I mentioned the leisure assessment. I think that's it for me. That was all I had to say.
Thank you.
My daughter likes me parking on the third story of that parking structure Friday morning, so
No problem.
we're good.
Yeah. Yeah, the Rangers will lock it up at 8 o'clock, and then Parks will open it up early in the morning when they get there to service it.
Sounds great. Any official business by our commissioners this last month?
Just the Park Development Committee meeting that Alex talked about.
Okay.
Mine was the arts master plan. I think it was very amicable. I think that our discussions were thoughtful, and there was a big learning curve that happened in the series of meetings. But in the end, we had consensus for the ordinance. So I'm hoping that we'll hear about it enough in advance so that we can contact our various representatives to bring them a full understanding of what the plan means and what the ordinance that we finally reached means. So hopefully we'll know about that. I think right now we don't know when it'll go to council.
That is correct. I did talk to the city manager yesterday a little bit about it. And again, they're waiting to kind of see where the council's going to go on some of their initiatives that Mark was mentioning earlier, Measure U extension, those kinds of things.
Okay.
Something just crossed my mind that I wanted to mention to you based on that, and I can't remember what it is now. So that is a senior moment there.
I also experienced those moments, right?
You experience those moments right now?
It's not just-
Well, no, that you're having parental
Just wait.
issues. Yes, that's just
Any report?
I can't remember. So.
So great job the other night at City Council. And you, great job. You rocked it with Buena Vista.
Oh,
Because
thank
that
you.
was such an issue with the Buena Vista group about, the park being closed this summer after initially it had been announced that it was going to have the summer program, but it's so amazing.
We'll be back for the fall, and we'll have a good summer, a good all year round program there when we get there. Yeah, Dennis ordered some art pieces for the park, or is ordering some. It's going to be nice.
Yeah.
You know, and the staff has been working on the event for the August 11th.
August 11th.
Which will be the rededication date.
Yeah, right.
And that was my question, thank you very much. So there's a plaque there now that was done when the rehab was done. Somewhere, we don't know where it is, there was an original plaque. So the question is, do we want to do a plaque on this rededication? And personally, I think we should. I think it's important to, mark another period of time that was important to the park. So one of the things that came up was, ordering the bronze plaque, putting it on a rock, going through that whole thing. I was thinking maybe we could, we don't have a lot of time, but maybe to look at something more art-oriented, that maybe it's a large tile with the verbiage as opposed to just being the typical bronze plaque. Maybe come up with something like that. So you guys think about that? Maybe we can look at some concepts.
It'd be nice to do like a time capsule.
Ooh.
That would be.
Because of the type of project and park that it is, and maybe in
That's
another
a good idea.
100-something
That's right there,
years.
No, she's just resting up there.
We can put a Kanye
She's typing
West
with her
CD in
eyes.
it or
Yeah,
something like that.
Definitely.
Yeah, the Warriors.
Okay, can I finish?
Sorry.
Just kidding. Okay, so May 7th and 8th, I actually went to the gang prevention and yeah, it didn't seem right though, it's here. An intervention in Carson as part of the mayor's task force, which was really a great experience, and I won't really go into it because we're kind of pressed for time, but I will at some future meeting because it's pertinent to our information and or to what we do, but it's also so in line with the recreation conference that we went to. It all came down to the same thing, and it's the connection with the kids, and that's what we do. So, okay. The open streets. We haven't talked about open streets at all. And Dennis goes to those meetings, but there's going to be an open street and an open streets. We go to the meetings every month, and it's planned for September 30th. And for those of you that aren't aware what that is, it's where the streets are going to be blocked off throughout Santa Maria. It's like, I've got the streets. It's kind of, the proposed route will run from Broadway to Russell Avenue and on to Pine Street, from Main Street to Buena Vista Park. It's going to end at Buena Vista Park. And it's going to be this great thing. It's going to be on Sunday, the 30th of September, where the streets are going to be blocked off, and there's going to be people biking. You can bike in the street, in the middle of town, and there's going to be all kinds of businesses and nonprofits doing interactive things with people from the community. It's a community-wide event, and it's going to be free, and it's going to be wonderful. So I go to those meetings. It's kind of something we should be connected with. The public art meeting. Well, you heard about that. I mean, we don't need to talk about it anymore. I won't talk about the rodeo judging. The Special Olympics, at noon, that was pretty fun. I was there. And it's cool because the runners come and then they go, and we don't have to do it. We just get to wave at them, which is fun. The Open Streets meeting, and then the Park Development meeting. But anyway, we need to keep an eye on the open streets. It's in 4 months, and there's a lot of planning going on, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about it, but that's it.
Well, Dennis, I wanted to say neener to you, because you did all the labor for the commission meeting that Mr. Posada was so kind to give you the next day off, but he didn't buy you lunch. He bought me lunch, though, because I was at the interview for the City Rangers that day, and I can't remember what day it was, but did we ever hire somebody?
We're back.
Okay.
We just literally picked up today to start the process, so.
Okay. One 32-hour and one 19-hour?
Actually, we're looking at 2 32-hour positions, three 32-hour positions. We had one, Rusty Price, who was a retiree from San Luis County, gave us his notice that he left last Friday, his last
Okay.
We have 232 that are funded by the,
1-year grant. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, I will declare us closed at 5:29. Thank you very much.